champagne splashed down my white silk dress, ice cold against my skin. The ballroom went silent for a heartbeat before the laughter started, polite, restrained, cruel. My father, Richard Hayes, stood on stage with a microphone in hand. "This one," he said, grinning at the crowd of Chicago's finest. "Always so clumsy." The room erupted again. My sister, Caroline, the family favorite, covered her mouth to hide a laugh. If you love real emotional stories, hit subscribe, we post one every week. I didn't cry. I didn't even flinch. I just tucked my wet hair behind my ear and smiled. A calm, deliberate smile, the kind that hides an entire storm behind it. They had no idea who I really was. No clue what was coming. 2 hours earlier, I'd been gripping the steering wheel of my Audi, weaving through downtown traffic. The invitation to Caroline's engagement party had been sitting on my counter for weeks, a glossy reminder of everything I swore I'd left behind. My husband, Ethan, had called from Zurich that morning. "You don't owe them anything," he said in that calm, grounding way of his. "You've already proven yourself." Ethan Cole, founder of Vertex Systems, a man whose net worth made headlines and whose privacy was legend. To my family, he was a myth. We'd been married 2 years, and I'd kept him out of their world deliberately, not out of shame, but self-preservation. And yet, there I was. Driving straight into the one place that still had the power to make me small. That's the poison of wanting acceptance, you keep going back to drink it, thinking maybe this time it'll taste like love. In my real life, I'm an assistant U.S. attorney. I cross-examine mob bosses and corporate predators without blinking. But when it comes to my family, I still turn into that 12-year-old who just wants to be seen. That's how they keep you, with the hope that this time will be different. I parked outside the Art Institute, fixed my lipstick, and walked inside. The air was heavy with money and lilies. My mother, Eleanor, appeared before I could take a breath. "Olivia, you came," she said, eyes flicking over my outfit like she was inspecting damage. "That hairstyle is practical." And just like that, she turned away to charm a donor. Caroline sparkled in the center of the room, radiant in her designer gown. She glowed with the kind of ease that only comes from being adored since birth. She was the golden child, the reflection of my father's pride and my mother's social ambitions. I was the scapegoat. I existed to make their perfection shine brighter. It wasn't random cruelty. It was a system. They needed me to fail so she could stay flawless. I thought about the first time I realized it, at 12 years old, standing on a stage clutching my state debate trophy, looking for my parents in the crowd. They never showed. Caroline had a dance recital that same night. So when the champagne hit my dress and laughter rolled through the ballroom, I didn't see humiliation. I saw clarity. The kind that comes when the mask finally breaks. I smiled at my father, small, sharp, and certain. He had no idea. None of them did. That was the moment everything started to change. I waited by the door, clutching my debate trophy so tightly my fingers ached. They never came. They'd promised they would, but that night was Caroline's spring ballet recital. Not her first solo, just another recital. Their applause for her echoed in my head long after the lights dimmed. My trophy ended up in the back of my closet, gathering dust. "Miss Hayes?" the usher asked, checking his list. "You're at table 19. Of course I was. Table 19, tucked behind a marble column, next to the catering doors, hidden in plain sight. I slipped into my seat among the distant relatives and the one kind face in the family, my cousin Rachel. She pulled me into a real hug. "Olivia," she whispered, "I'm so glad you came. You look beautiful." "Thanks, Rach. You too." Across the table, an older aunt leaned in, all pearls and judgment. "Olivia, dear, are you still working that little government job?" The public defender thing. Her tone carried both pity and superiority. It must be exhausting dealing with those people. And goodness, it can't pay much. You'll never meet anyone decent in that line of work. I just smiled. I didn't bother correcting her. I didn't tell her I was an assistant U.S. attorney who prosecuted billion-dollar corruption cases. Or that 2 years ago, I'd married Ethan Cole, the quiet tech visionary no one in my family knew existed. I kept that part of my life private. Safe. It was mine, and it was untouchable. To them, I was still Olivia, the clumsy, idealistic public defender. And for now, that was exactly who I needed to be. The music softened. My father, Richard Hayes, took the stage, tapping the microphone. The room stilled instantly. "Thank you all for joining us tonight," he began, his voice warm and commanding, the practiced tone of a man used to admiration. "This evening is a father's dream. My beautiful daughter, Caroline," he said, beaming as she looked up with that perfect, rehearsed smile, "is engaged to a man who truly meets our family standards, Nathan Harrison." Polite applause rippled through the ballroom. Nathan, the heir to a political dynasty, waved modestly. My father smiled like he'd personally arranged the merger. "Nathan, you're not just marrying Caroline," he continued. "You're joining a legacy of excellence." I took a sip of water. I knew my name wouldn't be mentioned. It never was. Then, his gaze found me. Table 19. His smile widened. "And of course," he said, adopting that false, generous tone I knew too well, "my other daughter, Olivia, is here tonight. She made it all by herself." A ripple of laughter rolled through the crowd. Not cruel, exactly, but condescending, the kind of chuckle people share when they think they're being kind. My father wasn't done. "We're so proud of Olivia's independence," he went on, stretching the word like it tasted sour. "Her dedication to that little job of hers. We just hope one day she'll find something more fulfilling. And maybe," he added with a wink, "a man to take care of her." This time, the laughter was louder. It filled every corner of the room. I didn't move. Didn't blink. I just felt Rachel's hand tighten on mine under the table. When the applause faded, my father raised his glass to Caroline and Nathan, basking in his own brilliance. Then he stepped off the stage, smiling, shaking hands, collecting praise like it was currency. I saw him spot a passing waiter with a tray of champagne. He plucked it up and headed straight toward me. My body went still. I knew this pattern, the private follow-up, the subtle humiliation meant only for me. He stopped at my table, casting a shadow over my seat. "Really, Olivia," he said softly, "you're at your sister's engagement party. The least you could do is look happy." And then he stumbled. A dramatic, deliberate slip. The silver tray tilted, and 12 glasses of champagne cascaded over me in one freezing, sparkling wave. The cold hit like a slap. Gasps echoed across the ballroom. My white dress clung to me, soaked through, translucent under the light. I stood there, dripping, my father's smirk fading into mock concern as the room watched in stunned silence. And I smiled. Not the smile they expected, not embarrassment, not surrender. Something colder. Sharper. The kind that meant the game had just changed. You could have heard a pin drop. My father, still gripping the empty tray, stared at me. His lapel mic was still on. He leaned forward, his voice carrying through every speaker in the ballroom. "This one," he said, with a sigh that dripped with fake amusement, "always so clumsy." The silence shattered. The laughter hit like thunder. Guests clapped, delighted by the show. My mother had a hand over her mouth, but her shoulders shook with laughter. Caroline was crimson, gasping for air, leaning on Nathan for balance. I sat there, drenched and perfectly still. The shock was gone. The humiliation, too. All that was left was clarity, sharp, clean, electric. The trap had finally closed, and I was done being the bait. Rachel rushed to my side, horror etched across her face, fumbling with napkins. "Oh my God, Liv, are you?" But before she could finish, someone else was already moving. Nathan Harrison, the golden fiancé, the future of his family's political empire, was suddenly in front of me. He didn't look at my father, who was still smirking, or at Caroline, who was calling his name. He looked at me, not with pity, but with something else. Recognition. The kind that stops time. "Caroline, 1 second," he said, brushing her off without even glancing her way. He crouched beside my chair, ignoring the puddle at my feet. My family inched closer, confused. Richard's grin faltered as he realized Nathan wasn't playing along. Nathan leaned in, voice low, urgent. "You're Olivia Hayes, aren't you?" I said nothing. His eyes widened. "The assistant U.S. attorney. You're the one who prosecuted Senator Byrne." I didn't flinch. Didn't confirm it. He ran a hand through his hair, suddenly pale. "My father's been trying to get a meeting with your office for weeks about that case. He says you're the most feared prosecutor in Chicago." The words hung there, slicing through the noise like a blade. For the first time, my father didn't know what to say. My mother's hand dropped from her face. Caroline blinked, trying to process what was happening. They might not have understood politics or federal law, but they understood power, and the fear on Nathan's face said everything. The laughter around us began to fade, replaced by uneasy murmurs. I still hadn't said a word. I didn't need to. Because I knew what was coming. I glanced toward the ballroom doors just as they swung open. Not with drama, with quiet precision. 2 men in tailored black suits entered first, scanning the crowd with the detached focus of professionals. Not security for the venue. Private. Efficient. Controlled. My father, still frozen from Nathan's revelation, puffed up his chest, trying to reclaim authority. "Excuse me," he began, stepping forward. "This is a private." He didn't finish. Because a third man stepped between them. The air shifted instantly. The chatter stopped. Even the music died. He wasn't tall, but his presence filled the space, the kind that drew attention without trying. His dark hair was neatly cut, his suit subtle but flawless, his expression calm, unreadable. "Ethan." He didn't need to say a word. The entire room felt it, the quiet, undeniable gravity of a man who didn't have to prove anything to anyone. And for the first time in my life, my father looked small. The man who walked through those doors was the one no one expected to exist outside of rumor, the reclusive founder of Vertex Systems. The billionaire who hadn't been photographed in years. The man every financial magazine called a ghost. Ethan Cole, my husband. He didn't look at my father, frozen beside the overturned tray. He didn't look at my mother, gripping the back of a chair to steady herself. He didn't glance at Caroline or her stunned fiancé. His eyes found only me, sitting at table 19, drenched, shivering, champagne dripping down my ruined white dress. And then he started walking. The crowd didn't just move aside. They parted like a tide retreating from the shore. Ethan's presence wasn't loud. It was the kind that made silence feel heavy. Every step he took drew the air tighter, the laughter dying completely before he even reached me. When he stopped in front of me, his eyes softened. Without a word, he shrugged off his own jacket, a dark Tom Ford piece I knew he loved, and gently wrapped it around my shoulders. The warmth of the fabric, the quiet care in his hands, hit harder than anything else that night. My whole body trembled until he pulled me close. His thumb brushed a strand of wet hair from my cheek. "Sorry I'm late, love," he murmured, his voice low, steady, intimate. The flight from Zurich was delayed. And then he kissed me. Not a polite, hesitant kiss. A real one. The kind that told every single person in that ballroom exactly who I was, his wife. The gasp that went through the crowd was almost physical. Somewhere, a glass shattered. My head rested against his chest, his heartbeat grounding me while the world gawked. He kept one arm wrapped around me, his jacket firm around my shoulders, then turned, calm, composed, unstoppable. His gaze landed on my father first. Richard Hayes stood there pale, mouth open, stripped of his confidence. My mother's face had gone ghost white. Caroline looked as if she'd just watched her reflection crack. Ethan's voice wasn't loud, but it carried through every inch of that hall. "I'm Ethan Cole," he said evenly, his eyes locked on my father. "Olivia's husband. We've been married for 2 years." If my being a federal prosecutor had confused them, this revelation destroyed them. My mother swayed like she might faint. Caroline blinked hard, her perfect engagement night collapsing around her. "No," she shrieked suddenly, voice breaking. "You're lying. You hired him. You planned this to ruin everything." Richard tried to speak, sputtering. But you're a public lawyer," he stammered, glancing helplessly between us. He's a billionaire." I turned to face him, feeling nothing but a cold, quiet certainty. "I was never a public defender, Dad," I said, my voice steady, carrying in the hush. "I'm an assistant U.S. attorney. I never lied to you. I just stopped sharing my life with people who only knew how to tear it apart." Ethan's arm tightened protectively around my waist. His tone turned glacial. "And just so we're clear, Mr. Hayes," he said, his words calm and lethal, "I watched you humiliate my wife. I watched you assault her with that tray. My security team has the entire thing on video. You'll be hearing from my attorneys." That was the end of it. The color drained from my father's face, replaced by the pale gray of realization. He was a developer, he knew exactly what that meant. My mother's lips trembled, her mask cracking. Caroline was speechless, trembling with the weight of what she'd lost. I took one last look at them, my family, frozen in disbelief, their carefully crafted world collapsing around them. "Congratulations on the engagement, Caroline," I said softly. "We'll be leaving now." Ethan didn't let go of me. We turned together, walking toward the doors. His security detail closed ranks around us, a silent wall of calm authority. The crowd parted again, whispering in stunned silence. And just like that, we walked out, leaving behind the glitter, the laughter, and the broken illusion of the people who never really saw me at all. I didn't speak to my family again after that night. A year passed, 12 months of therapy, reflection, and slow, uncomfortable honesty, before any real conversation could happen. What we have now isn't perfect, it probably never will be. But for the first time, it's honest. It exists within boundaries that protect, not destroy. I learned that family isn't always the people who raised you or share your last name. It's the people who choose to understand you, who show up when the world doesn't. Ethan is my family. Rachel, my cousin who handed me napkins that night when no one else moved, is my family. My colleagues at the U.S. Attorney's Office, they're my family too. Sometimes the greatest act of strength is realizing you don't need to keep fighting for space at a table where you were never welcome. You can stand, walk away, and build a new one where love feels safe and peace isn't conditional. Have you ever had to draw a hard line to protect your peace? Tell me your story in the comments. I'd love to hear it.